Hey, my dear, do you want to know how to escape survival mode? Keep listening because I'm going to give you 3 steps for you to escape survival mode. Hey, my dear, I am leadership development coach Kathy Archer. Please tell me you are not trying to do leadership all alone. I'm on your team, and I'm going to help you ditch survival mode by learning what daily actions to take and what mindset shifts to make, so you can increase your competence and feel more confident as you lead in your nonprofit team. Today, we're going to talk about those 3 steps to help you escape survival mode. So, have you ever said, just get me through this day? Does that sound like that well-known plea that you mutter often? Maybe for you, it's just get me through this meeting. Just get me through this project. Just get me through this trip. If you are all too familiar with these phrases and want to change that, keep listening because I'm going to tell you how you can move from just surviving to thriving in both your leadership and life. So let's start with the surviving to thriving continuum. Sadly, far too many women leaders like us regularly recite similar lines like that one, just get me through today. Regardless of the version, each of those mantras is a red flag signaling that you might be in survival mode. And the truth is, we've all been there at some point or another. Survival mode becomes a problem when you live there rather than visit there. There will always be busy times. Leaders are constantly involved in the ebb and flow of new projects, shifts in contractual expectations, annual cycles of budgets, performance reviews, grant proposals, or contract renewals. It's the job. There's no way around it. But I'm not talking so much about the work itself. Instead, I'm focusing on your attitude toward the work, how you balance your workload, and the impact that has on you. The effect of all of that falls on a continuum. So we're going to start with looking at the opposite ends of the gamut. First, let's talk about survival mode, which I think of as on the left end of the continuum. Survival mode is characterized by fear. You're always afraid of falling apart, dropping the ball, or losing it emotionally. You're barely hanging on, just getting by, or trying to stay alive. In survival mode, it feels like everything is a battle, and you must suffer through it or endure the storm. You have little energy, are negative, cynical, or openly apathetic. Perhaps you've found yourself muttering whatever a little too frequently. Those in survival mode tend to feel isolated and alone. It doesn't feel like anybody cares about you or that you have anyone on your team, and it often feels like everybody's out to get you. When I was in survival mode, I honestly hated a few people and loathed a couple others because it always felt like they were ready to throw me under the bus. This end of the spectrum, survival, is marked by crisis management, putting out fires, and only day-to-day sustainability. Lord knows you can't last like this forever. I'm afraid to tell you, but burnout is knocking on your door if you're here. So that's that left end of the continuum, the survival place. Way on the other end is what I call thriving mode. The thriving mode on the right end of the continuum is characterized by passion. You're growing and developing and loving it, despite the challenges. To many, this place is an adventure with a purpose. You're blooming and flourishing as you learn new things and take on engaging projects. Those in thriving mode tend to feel confident, courageous, and are resilient. It isn't that people on this end of the continuum don't encounter challenges. The difference is that they are confident they can handle the challenges. When I moved into thriving mode, I was eager to go to work. I felt like I was doing meaningful work, and I could say I was stretched, but not to the point of snapping. This end of the spectrum, thriving, is marked by feelings of being engaged and supported and connected. Leaders in thriving mode feel like they belong to a broader community of support and feel that they're making a positive impact through their work. Now, it's not usually black or white. Rarely are any of us entirely on one end of the spectrum. We're likely at some point between. We ebb and flow daily. Depending on where you are and who you're interacting with, the day's agenda, you can shoot from one end of the continuum to the other pretty darn quickly. As such, most of us sit somewhere along the surviving to thriving continuum, moving around at various points in the middle. So let's talk about the middle. The middle is what I call coping mode. In the center of the surviving to thriving continuum is what I call coping. You're doing more than barely getting by, but you're not feeling so alive that you want to yell from the mountaintops about how much you love your job. Instead, you go to work, you have some good days, lots of so-so days, and a few insane days. The coping mode can also be thought of as maintaining. You're doing good enough, the best you can, or at least better than bad. You're kind of just existing. For some, leaders who are in coping place feel bored when in the middle. There's no challenge, no pull, no drive to use your skills or talents. And often that's a sign that you've been in the position far longer than you should have been. I find that in this coping mode, many leaders are tolerating, settling, or complying with less than stellar workplace environments, teams, and bosses. Things aren't so good, but they're not so bad that you feel the urge to rock the boat. When I was in coping mode, I felt emotionally flatlined. I didn't feel a lot of excitement or joy. Instead, I felt like it was more like running around the same hamster wheel day after day. I had some friends that would connect with me and let me vent, but not a ton of support to move the needle forward. So coping mode runs from that range of short-term stability, meaning you could go on like that for, a few months, to a way of life. And sadly, many women leaders believe this is just the way it is, and they don't think they can change it. So instead of a period before things move one way or the other, leaders stay in coping mode for most of their careers. Now, my guess is that's not what you want to do. So here are the 3 steps to move you from surviving to thriving. The truth is you can move from that survival place to coping to thriving at work and in life. You have a choice. You do not have to stay stuck in your current mode forever. So for you to move along the continuum, there's 3 key things you need to do. First, recognize where you are on the continuum. I'm going to put a link to a guide that's going to help you assess where you land regularly. Awareness is always the first step to change. So when you see it in black and white, sometimes that's the catalyst that you need to make those changes faster. Also, when you're assessing where you land on the continuum, notice when you tend to slip into survival mode. Is it a particular time of year? Do you find yourself in survival mode every time you start a new program or hire a new person? Do you notice movement towards thriving when you get involved in a particular committee or project that excites you? The answers to those questions are all going to increase your awareness and become keys that you can use to move to the right of the continuum. Now remember, if you need help and want to figure out where you land, I'm going to put a link in below so that you can get the assessment to help you figure out where you land on that continuum. The first step is that you need to assess where you're at. The second step is to get clear where you want to be. You need to have a target. Change takes time and effort, and you're going to have to be intentional about making the changes. To help you, you need to create goals that you're aiming for. I call this your thriving target. Thriving is growing and being challenged in a good way. It's about doing meaningful work, yet maintaining balance. And you'll need to get clear on what that looks like specifically for you. That's your thriving target. So step 1, assess where you are. Step 2, get clear on where you want to be. And step 3 is create your plan to move from surviving to thriving. So to move to the right, to thriving, you're going to need to create some new habits. Your current habits are keeping you stuck. And you've likely been sitting on the edge of survival mode for a long time. You know it well because it's become your way of life. You've developed damaging habits to cope with lack of sleep, missed meals, and limited time for yourself and your family. You know how to get critical things done with a hectic schedule at the office and have a system in place for ensuring that everyone's basic needs get met, but not much more. And you habitually put off reading that book, taking that personal development course, or going to that training that you're so passionate about because you know in the big scheme of things it's just not that important. Oh, but my dear, it is, and you are so worth it. If you're going to move from surviving to thriving in work and in life, you're going to need to create new habits around self-care, self-reflection, and self-improvement. But be gentle and persistent as you develop these new habits. It's going to take time and effort, but please do not think you have to do it all alone. I'm on your team, my dear. And each week I give you the daily steps you need to take and the mindset shifts you need to make so that you can increase your competence and feel more confident to thrive in both leadership and life. Make sure you go grab that download right now so you can assess where you land on the surviving to thriving continuum. And then you can get clear on where your target is and start to create your plan to move from surviving to thriving in both your leadership and your life.